Hello. This year I'm very excited to be making my very first visit to Halloween Horror Nights in Orlando, Florida. All 10 of the houses have now been announced, so to get ready for the event I thought I'd cram in some movies and TV shows to get ready for these. I'm discussing specific things for the IP houses, but then for the non-IP I've just watched something for each as a guess on what I think they'll be like from the description. I will talk about the film's plots and things like that whilst discussing them, so there will be spoilers. If I start talking about any you don't want to be spoiled, you might want to just skip ahead past that one. When talking about films, I also use a grading system based on Lonely Island. Top ranked S-tier films get Everything is Awesome. These are brilliant movies. Below that, we have Incredible Thoughts. These are films that have some great moments, but as a whole are just one step away from greatness. Then we have Lazy Sunday. These are films that are quite good, and if you're stuck for something to watch on a Sunday afternoon, these'll do. Then we have Incredibad. As it sounds, these are bad films that are still highly entertaining to watch. This is a higher rank than the average films, as a good bad film is better than a boring normal one. Then we have YOLO. These films are just okay, average at best. You only live once, so it's up to you if you want to spend your time watching something this average, and if you do, it's not one that you'll be revisiting very often. Then finally, we have films that are just bad. These are the Whack album. That's enough of the introduction though, I know you'll want me just to be getting on with it.
Give me all you got! Give me all you got!
On to the films. The first house I will look at is Fallout. This says it's time to face the fallout. Face your fears in post-apocalyptic LA, devastated by nuclear war, based on the hit show and game franchise Fallout. You'll travel into the vaults and be attacked by raiders alongside Lucy. You'll escape to the wasteland and confront the bounty hunter, the Ghoul. You'll even encounter Maximus with the Brotherhood of Steel and see T-60 power armor. For this then, I didn't watch a film, I obviously watched the Fallout TV show. I watched this when it first came out and I was looking forward to a rewatch. In terms of the games, I did love Fallout 4, it's been one of my favourite games of recent-ish years. I've not played any of the others, but I have seen plenty of content online for them. I've seen many a true nerd play several of them doing fun challenges, which always are entertaining to watch. The show doesn't follow any specific storylines of the games, but for me it 100% felt like it's the same universe. I'll not cover the full storyline of the series whilst it's around 8 hours long, but the basics are, it is set in a post-apocalyptic world after the world has experienced a nuclear apocalypse. The show has a large cast of characters, but there's 3 main ones we follow. Some humans survive the blast by hiding in fallout shelters known as vaults. The first main lead for our show is Lucy, played by Ella Purnell. She's living in one of the aforementioned shelters. When their vault is infiltrated by raiders, Lucy's father is kidnapped. Lucy then leaves her vault to search for him. The next lead is Maximus, played by Aaron Moten. He's a member of the Brotherhood of Steel, a military group who patrol the wastelands in power armor. He begins the series as a sort of gopher for a knight who wears the armour. After the night is off though, Maximus takes control of this. The third lead is the Ghoul, played by Walton Goggins. He was a human before the nuclear fallout, but the radiation has transformed him into a ghoul, and his character is pretty much like the coolest Western character ever that is not in a Western. So, what did I think of it? Having a vague familiarity with the games, I have to say this show absolutely nailed the aesthetic. The sets, costumes and whole look of everything is superb. I also love the tone of the show and I can't wait to see it translated into a horror house. It is violent in parts, but the film never lets go of its fun tone. They balance everything just about right. It is filled with bright colours and it really leans into the world. I felt a similar experience when watching the recent James Gunn Superman film, and I hope this is a resurgence of colourful media. The cast are superb. I wasn't really familiar with Ella Purnell before this, but she is great in the role and has great comic timing. I hope she does more straight-up comedies in the future. She reminds me a lot of Emma Stone. She just always maintains a likeability whatever is going on, and those two will have to play sisters in a film at some point. I was also not familiar with Aaron Moten, but he's also impressive. I'd say he has the least showy role over the other leads, but he probably has the most difficult part to play, as his character seems to have the biggest range of emotions, which he always nails. Then onto Walton Goggins, and he is superb as he always is. I think he's pretty much one of the best actors working at the moment, with one of the greatest ranges ever. Even in the last year, with this, The White Lotus, and The Righteous Gemstones, there couldn't be more different characters he's played, but he has been the best thing in all three shows. Just look at his performance as Uncle Baby Billy compared to this. There are also some entertaining smaller roles played by talented people. Chris Parnell is funny as a Cyclops in a vault that Lucy visits for 2 episodes. And the always excellent Matt Berry is the voice of the Mr. Handy robots, and he also pops up in human form in a flashback, which provided the biggest laugh of the series with his reaction to a story about how much he got paid. And as always, Matt Berry just has the best delivery lines of everything.
He were buddies, weren't you?
So I like the cast, the look, and the actors then. It is a solid first series, well paced, and just immediately immerses you in the world. This might be a bit mean, I'm not giving it top rank, but I'm going to give this one incredible thoughts. This is only because it's series 1, and although I was hooked and it ended where I definitely want to see what happens next, I think I would need to see what does happen before giving it the highest ranking, as it is only the start of the story so far. The next IP house is Terrifier. The description reads, "The Terrifier isn't clowning around. Nothing can prepare you for this grisly haunted house based on all 3 of Damien Leone's Terrifier films. Try your luck against the sadistic Art the Clown in his twisted funhouse. Witness Art's gleeful, grotesque handiwork of torture. You'll be left literally dripping with terror and drenched with fear. It's a whole new level of gore." I've not actually mentioned yet, but when I'm writing the scripts for these films, I'm writing each one after I've seen it, so at this point I've only seen the first one and I don't actually know what's coming in the sequels. So this story is set on Halloween, and after a night out, 2 friends, Tara and Dawn, stop in a cafe where they meet Art the Clown. Art is silent and doesn't speak, but spends the rest of the runtime being incredibly inventive in the way he tortures and mutilates pretty much every character. And that's it, there isn't really any story here. It's bookended by a TV interview with someone who we find out at the end was the only survivor of Art, although he did cut off their face. This is the reason I clarified I'm writing this without watching the other films, as I just didn't like this one at all, and I'm hoping the series picks up. What I do like is Art as a character, and David Howard Thornton is genuinely brilliant. The acting by the rest of the cast did vary in quality. At the start it seemed to be setting up Tara to be the final girl, and the actress playing her was pretty good. She didn't last too long though, and then the film just sort of jumps from character to character, and you don't end up getting to know anybody, so you're just watching random people being tortured by a clown with pretty much no connecting story. There is some humour in here that is funny. Art using a gun made me laugh. I don't think I've ever seen a slasher villain do that before. You also can't not talk about how great the effects are, especially for a low budget. Overall though, this is a film I just really didn't like, but I can see how it would appeal to some people. I feel bad giving it the whack album, so I'm already breaking my rankings and giving this one its own category of the creep. I don't like this, but I can understand that some people will, but the world of this film is just not a place I enjoyed being in.
What kind of a place is this?
On to the sequel then, and I have to say that before I hit play on this one big thing stands out. This film is almost 2.5 hours long. I have no idea what could justify it being that length, and after watching it now, I can say there's no need for it to be. This film actually has more story than the first. Here we have a lead character named Sienna who is being haunted by the dreams of Art, and the other lead is her younger brother Jonathan. The film then has Art picking off Sienna's friends and family one by one ahead of the final showdown. This time around, Art also has a sidekick for his journey, with a creepy little clown girl accompanying him. At first nobody can see this character until she meets Jonathan, and he can see them both. So for the good bits here, Art again is brilliant and even funnier. The creepy little girl is also a great addition. The acting is still a bit of a mixed bag, but it's definitely better than the first, and the lead Sienna, played by Lauren Lavera, is great in this. They definitely chose the right person to lead. I did enjoy the dream sequences with Art on an almost children's television show setting, and I appreciate that we at least have some story to get to know the people before Art gets them. Also again, the effects are 10 out of 10. Unfortunately though, there is still a lot here I didn't like. As a film it still just doesn't fully work for me. It goes on forever, and especially the final act I was just clock watching. I said this one at least had a story, but the pacing of it is just off, and it does grind to a halt in some scenes between the action. You still really don't get to know any of the characters other than Art and Sienna. I I appreciate it tries to build some of the lore to the universe, but I think I missed something. I wasn't exactly sure why Sienna's dad had a drawing of her beheading Art. And even more confusing, I don't know why her dad would draw her wearing pretty much just a bikini. It just seems like a really weird thing for a dad to do.
Bit creepy.
I also feel a bit like Mary Whitehouse saying this, but there's one scene in the middle, and wow, even I found that pushing it a bit too far. Art spends several minutes doing horrendous things to one of the friend characters, and it just got so drawn out, I was just thinking again just how much this isn't for me. It was still a step up from the first though, and I can see the appeal. Art is genuinely funny, but again as a whole it just falls short. As it's better than the first though, and there were bits that I like, I'll give this one a YOLO. So to round off the trilogy, I watched Terrifier 3. And this one has Chris Jericho back again at the start, following a cameo from him at the end of the last one.
A little bit of the bubbly.
Albeit very briefly, until Art and his sidekick get to him. This film is set 5 years after the sequel, and it is surprisingly a Christmas movie. Sienna is still traumatised from the events of last time, understandably so, and she has been in and out of psychiatric care. She goes to live with her aunt, uncle and niece. I also realised I forgot to say her mum was a victim of Art in the last one. But as that happened after the bedroom scene, I think that was pretty much the only thing on my mind when writing the script on that one. Art doesn't have the little girl sidekick this time round. He instead has Vicky, who was the survivor who lost her face in the first one. She's possessed by the same spirit as the little girl, and I'm guessing this may be because the child actress obviously would have aged up between the films. The story is similar with Art just picking off everyone around Sienna. I will say though, this was easily the most I enjoyed of the three. It is shorter at 2 hours and the story seems more focused. They also just really let David Howard Thornton do more and more funny scenes as the movies go on, and he is superb. I can see why he's becoming a horror icon. The scene where Art meets the shopping mall Santa is just hilarious. This film does use the Christmas setting well and does have some genuinely funny scenes.
It was a Christmas joke.
The film again is heavily violent, but there's nothing quite as nasty as the bedroom scene in the second, although it still doesn't really hold back. Art also picks off several children in this one, and I was thankful these weren't on screen, although it is still shocking to see the aftermaths. The acting this time was pretty good, and it even had cameos from Clint Howard and Tom Savini, which I'm not going to complain about. I also have to give them credit for explaining the dad's drawing from the second. I must admit that he was a comic book artist. It was still a little bit weird though. I do hope there were some Christmas touches in the Halloween Horror Nights house, as it would also help make it a bit different than the others. It's still not a perfect movie, the dialogue isn't great in parts, but I did like the side characters a bit more this time. One is a serial killer obsessed podcaster, and they were pretty entertaining. Lauren Lavera is also even better in this. The first time she sees Art in a mall and a tear drops down her face was just great acting and a well shot part of the film. I think this series has a brilliant character in Art, but the rest of the films around him just don't live up to him. But they are getting better with each one. I think I'll give this one Lazy Sunday. Although it does seem a bit weird, someone will watch this to relax. They are definitely growing on me as they go on. The next IP house I'll cover is Five Nights at Freddy's. This one says Freddy and the gang are dying to meet you. You wouldn't last one night at Freddy's, let alone 5. You're about to be hunted by deadly animatronics, Freddy, Bonnie, Chica and Foxy, as you flee through creepy abandoned hallways. For this, I obviously watched the Five Nights at Freddy's movie. I had seen this before, so revisited again. I've still never played the games, so it's not something I know the deep lore of or anything. The film stars Josh Hutcherson, and it starts off with him being a mall security guard. He thinks a child is getting kidnapped, but it was just their dad, and he runs and punches them, so he's fired. He goes to a job advisor played by Matthew Lillard, who offers him a security guard position on the night shift at Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria, a place that shut down in the 80s. He takes the job as he is currently looking after his sister Abby and also trying to keep their aunt from taking custody of her. Abby is a kid who draws a lot and talks to imaginary friends, so pretty much standard for a horror film. Josh starts the work, and I will say the pizzeria looks superb. It definitely nails the 80s and 90s aesthetic, and has that carpet every kid's place in that period did. I can't wait to see what this looks like in the Horror Night house. When he first enters, he sees the monitors, like on the games, and I presume there are several other Easter eggs for fans of it here. Josh is pretty useless on the night shifts, and there is a recurring part of the film where he keeps sleeping and dreaming of his brother being kidnapped. His brother was kidnapped when they were little and never found, and he thinks he can use the dreams to see the kidnapper's face. As the film goes on, the local cop Vanessa starts regularly stopping by, and they grow close. She also shows him the animatronics in the building, which are Freddy and his friends. His aunt, who wants custody of Abby, asks his cousins to wreck the place when he finishes, in a plan that seems terrible to me. I mean, it has security cameras, so they'll show it happened after he finished. But anyway, they break in, and Freddy and the other robotics don't like this, so get them all. Josh starts bringing Abby to his night shifts, and maybe he should lose custody, as she's supposed to be in school in the day, and then there all night. She makes friends with the animatronics, and Josh's dreams start to involve other children as well. Vanessa tells him of children who went missing in the 80s, so they start to think it must be them. Skipping ahead through the story, we find out the animatronics have the ghosts of the missing children in them, and the kidnapper all along was Vanessa's dad, who is Matthew Lillard. They have a showdown, Vanessa is stabbed but survived in case there's a sequel, and Abby turns the toys on Matthew Lillard. As you can probably tell from that all over the place explanation, there's just way too much story going on in this. It could have been a simple story of just running from robots, but I guess it ties into the games. Bits of the story also just don't seem to make sense. It even ends with a teaser that Matthew Lillard is still alive in the pizzeria. But why is that? Why didn't Josh tell the police? What did he say when he took Vanessa to the hospital? It is a tamer horror than everything else I've watched before this, and I know I'm kinda not the target audience, I'm just in the wrong generation. I do think if I was 12 or 13 when this came out, then no doubt I'd have loved it. It's also a bit unfortunate he tries to do a mystery as to who is controlling the animatronics. But once Matthew Lillard has popped up at the start, you immediately must know it's the famous actor who popped up earlier.
We're all trying to find the guy who did this and give him a spanking.
It's obviously this guy, right?
Yes.
It's not bad, and I think I'll give it Lazy Sunday. And that is for one reason I've not said yet. This film has some of the most amazing and impressive costumes and animatronics I've ever seen. It looks incredible, and I'm sure there is CGI there to enhance bits, but the practical work they did on these is amazing. If they can even come close to capturing this at Halloween Horror Nights, this house is going to be incredible. Right, buckle in for this next house, as this will probably take longer to talk about than the rest of the others combined, as there's 12 films I watched for this one. This time, I'm discussing Jason Universe. Here you come face to face with the iconic horror villain Jason Voorhees. Step into the terrifying world of this silent killer. Flee through the woods and into his sinister shack. Enter the summer camp where his gruesome legend began. Jason is back, and nothing can save you now. The first Friday the 13th is set in the 80s and follows several teen characters who are at a summer camp. The characters are all having a nice time until they start getting picked off by an unknown killer. Jump ahead to the end, and the one picked them off was, yes, you guessed it, no, actually it isn't Jason in this one. This time it's actually his mum, Mrs. Voorhees. I will say I loved the grimy 80s look in this, and the acting was better than you'd expect. There's even a young Kevin Bacon in this, who has what is by far the most memorable scene where he gets an arrow through his neck. Like Terrifier, the standout here is definitely the special effects, and they are impressive. The characters all also feel like different people. There is a creepy old guy named Ralph, who I guess is a red herring and it wants you to think is behind it. There is Ned, an annoying guy who seems like the prototype for Stifler in the American Pie movies. It's just everyone feels different, and not like current films where everyone is the snarky funny one. It is a cheap looking film in parts, and a few times they seem to just be copying the Psycho music, which is distracting as it makes you think of a better film. There are also two big problems I have with this. The first is the bigger one. They kill a live snake on screen. I wasn't going to research facts for any of the films or anything, but this shocked me so much I just had to check if it was real. And just, there's no need for that. The second is, as a whodunit, which is what this film essentially is, it just doesn't work. Mrs. Voorhees only appears near the end, and before that you don't even know she existed. It's like if at the end of Knives Out 2, Daniel Craig got everyone together and said the murderer was a new character.
Just tell us who tried to kill me.
It was a woman who visited here 20 years ago, and we haven't mentioned her until now. It also doesn't make sense. It is as some people are launched through windows and dangled from trees. How did she do that? Her motive is Jason, her son, drowned at the camp, as camp counsellors were supposed to be watching him, but were instead hooking up with each other. That makes sense, but I can't help but feel it could have been told better. It also ends with a jump scare where Jason is still a child in the water. It's unclear if it's a dream, but that just raises more questions. It is the start of the franchise, and the effects, look and acting were all well done. I don't love this, but it is the kick-off for a franchise, so I'll give this one Lazy Sunday. On to Friday the 13th Part 2, and the setup is pretty much the same. A group of teens that look like they're played by actors in their 20s and 30s go to holiday to Camp Crystal Lake and are picked off one by one. And this time, the killer is actually Jason. Everyone's favourite slasher villain with his iconic Oh, actually, he doesn't have that look yet. His look in this one is very reminiscent of Jonah Hill in Django Unchained. He just has a bag on his head. This is pretty much the same story. There are even the same archetype characters, with again a funny Stifler type guy, and even the creepy Ralph is back. But this time, they got the killer that they should have done the first time round. The effects are okay, but there is no real standout moment like the Kevin Bacon arrow scene in the first. What I do think is better this time round is the direction. There are several voyeuristic POV shots from Jason's view in the bushes or hidden, and it does give it a genuinely creepy feel. The music is also much better, with the iconic used very well. There are bits I like. I like Schrodinger's chainsaw at the start, where we see it stored away and just know that it will be coming back at the end, which it does. It's still not a perfect film. I really don't like at the start they just off the final girl from the first film straight away. She went through so much in the first and deserved better than that. I've always been annoyed at Hostel 2 for starting that way, but rewatching this it clicked to me that was probably referencing this. The start is also incredibly lazy, with it just replaying several minutes of the first. It just felt a bit like they were padding out the runtime. Also, as a story, it just doesn't really make sense. If Jason was alive, why did his mum do all that in the first one? Did she think he had drowned, and if so, why didn't he just tell her? It just wasn't explained, and I think it's just one of those types of films that just hopes you won't question it. It very much feels like a step in the right direction for the franchise with Jason as a villain, but it's still finding its feet here, so again, it's getting Lazy Sunday. On to Friday the 13th 3D now, and the story is copy and paste again, with a group of teens partying at Camp Crystal Lake before being picked off, and this time it's by Jason in his iconic hockey mask. There is again a comic relief character, and that is who Jason actually gets the mask of this time. It's an actor who kinda looks like Jonah Hill in Superbad. Again, this movie starts by showing 5 minutes or so of the previous film. This film is also confusing with the characters' ages. I thought they were supposed to be teens going to the lake, but then there's this hippie guy with them who looks about 50. Who's he? One of the main actresses also has a boyfriend arrive, and he turns up and he looks like a bloke in his 40s. There is a strange tone in this one. It tries to add some humour, but it's just weird. Like at the start it has a guy eating fish food. It just feels random. There is a side plot this time with a biker gang who feel more like they would fit in the Warriors universe. And they come to the camp and it turns into more of like a Porky's teen comedy with them sabotaging everywhere. It's also just impossible to talk about this film and not mention the 3D. It is hilarious to watch this now as 2D on the TV with all the gimmicks they try. They have someone yo-yo to the camera, someone carrying a washing pole, a snake jumping, a wallet thrown, juggling, just all random things keep happening to try and make them look like they're going to the camera.
What am I talking about? Talking about all of you getting jobs. Now the best place to look for a job... Who threw the tomato?
They use it for all these random things, but for actual bits where it would have worked, it is underused. Someone gets thrown through a window, but this is not in the direction of the camera. And also Jason throws a knife at the end, but again in a different direction. Some bits do work. I mentioned the gang, but the story does connect them with the main story quite well for the finale. The effects are pretty good in this, and the series has its funniest death so far, when a guy inexplicably walks around on his hands before Jason finds him with a machete. It also ends with an extremely weird callback to the dream from the first, with what I presume is another dream, with Mrs. Voorhees jumping out of the water this time. This film is not good, but with the wacky 3D, it's very enjoyable, so this is a definite recommend, and it gets Incredibad. Film 4 now, and I'm sure I don't need to say the story again. It's just teens go to Crystal Lake to party and are picked off by Jason. This one is also named the final chapter, but that clearly isn't the point, as I've still got 8 more after this. I do think this is where the series really found its form though. The cast is great, for a pre-Back to the Future Crispin Glover and a pre-Goonies Corey Feldman amongst the main players. This film started with Jason being dead from the previous one, and he wakes up in a morgue. It doesn't have an explanation for this, he just wakes up and gets the workers there before leaving. It also made me realise that this happened quite similar at the end of Terrifier 1, with no explanation, and that was probably a reference in this. I'm enjoying making these connections I probably wouldn't have got if I hadn't watched them so close to each other. This is a bit more violent than the previous one, and the makeup here is again good. It balances everything well, and I'll just say it here because it's all everyone talks about with this film, but Crispin Glover dancing is hilarious.
I have to do it now!
It does kind of feel like this is the fourth time they've tried to make the same film, but here they finally perfected it. There are similar characters each time, similar situations, but in this one Jason feels like Jason from the start, and he's the unstoppable monster we know. That is until the end, when Corey Feldman goes to town on him, and it kind of feels like they want to set a spin-off for him or something with how this ends. Guess I'll have to see if he's mentioned in the next or just forgotten. I have seen some of these movies before, but I can't remember which ones, and they're the sort of things I watch late at night on TV, so I never watched them in order. They've all sort of just merged into one movie in my mind over time. Apart from 10 and 11 which are coming up, I know those two quite well from my teen years. I think this one had the best writing, some characters are annoying. There's one repeated joke about a nickname for Crispin Glover that isn't funny the first time, let alone the 15th, but everyone here does have distinctive personalities. There's also a bit where two twin women show up, and the men just leave their friend, who's a woman, to walk alone in the woods. She's fine, but it just sets them up to show that this is a gang who's going to be useless once Jason's here. There are also lots of characters in this one, but that means Jason has a lot of people to pick off, and the pace doesn't let up. The previous entries had some lazy jump scares, especially with cats, but here they actually put effort into them. There's one scene where Jason grabs someone through a window, and that's pretty effective. The character of Trish also makes a good final girl, and it was nice to have one who fights back a bit more against Jason. It's a big claim, but this is the peak of the series so far, and I have to say this has just perfected everything I wanted, so I'm going to give this one Everything is Awesome. Friday the 13th Part 5 now, and this is the new chapter. I did wonder if the Corey Feldman ending would turn up again, and surprisingly it did. Corey is here very briefly, and then we jump forward to see an older version of him. I realised I didn't say his character name in the last film, I just called him Corey, but it's Tommy, so I'll refer to him as that from now on. Tommy is at a child psychiatric camp at Crystal Lake, and here they are all picked off again by, yes, you guessed it, oh, it's not Jason again. This time, it's just some guy named Roy. You might be wondering who Roy is, and I don't blame you, he doesn't make much of an impact. Roy.
Oh.
Roy.
Oh.
Roy. The film suggests it's Jason, and teases you it may actually be Tommy, but in the end it's just a paramedic named Roy. The film starts off at the camp, and some guy asks to help chop some wood with another member, but this member gets angry and chops him with an axe. This is where we're introduced to Roy, who is the paramedic who comes to collect the body. We then follow Tommy and the other people at the camp. The ages in this one are confusing. Tommy looks to be in his 20s, but then his friend who he shares a room with is like 11 or 12. They are hunted, but something feels off, as Jason was so present in the last one, and it's strange to hide him here. You just know something isn't right. I also think the violence is toned down here, with lots of the deaths happening off screen. This doesn't seem to be to get a lower rating though, as there's still lots of other adult things in here. Maybe they just didn't have the budget for the effects or something this time. Tommy dreams of Jason a few times, but this movie really lacks his present, and it feels like a step back after part 4. One distracting thing as well is there's two neighbours who come to the camp. They're supposed to be mother and son, but the actor and actress look the same age, she just has a bad wig on. It also has a baffling ending, with Tommy dreaming of Jason, and I think we're supposed to think he's now possessed by him or something. I don't know if this will come back, but I guess I'll find out soon. You don't really get to know any of the characters here like in 4 either. Sure, they were annoying in the last one, but at least they had personalities. In this one, Tommy barely even says a line. It's only after the killer is finally revealed, after a fall into the spikes at the barn, that we get his backstory for doing this. It was because it was his son at the start who got axed. It just really didn't work on this one really. They wanted more of a mystery, and it just all feels lower budget and like a straight-to-video sequel, even though it wasn't. It's an interesting oddity, but if you're watching the series, I think no Jason means it's pretty forgettable. I'm giving this one YOLO. On to the 6th film, Jason Lives. Surprisingly, we've got Tommy back, although he's a different actor again now. More importantly though, we do have our main guy back as the villain. Jason! Tommy is terrified of Jason coming back, so him and a friend go dig up his body to check he's dead. They see he is and stab him with a pole, but then lightning strikes this and Jason comes back to life. It's such a ridiculous setup, as if Tommy didn't do anything, then he'd be fine. It's literally all his fault Jason is back. It then had a pre-credit moment that made me laugh and seemed more like the start to a scary movie. Jason walks on James Bond style in his barrel shot and slashes the camera. This sets the tone for the rest of the film, as this is the most slapstick and intentionally comedic so far. Tommy is trying to convince people Jason is back. He has a girlfriend who is the daughter of the police officer who hates him, and they have their own side storyline. Then the other storyline is Jason, where he just mooches about and gets people. These are all played more for laughs than horror, and this is the least violent and least steamiest one so far. There's one comedy scene where Jason hunts some people playing paintball, and one of the guys looks a little bit like Woody Allen. It's not him though. Jason also goes to the camp where it's all now younger kids, and luckily he doesn't get any of them. See, Art, you don't need to do that. In the end, Tommy gets a chain round Jason's neck and gets him underwater before his girlfriend hits him with a motorboat propeller. It ends with Jason's eyes open though, so we know he's still alive. This one at least tried something different and fun, and it has some brilliantly terrible 80s fashion. It's not a good film, but it's the most fun of them so far, so this is Incredibad. I had thought that I'd seen all of the Jason films before, but watching this one I realised I don't think I've ever seen it. We have the iconic Versus film coming up later in the series, but this one is the first Versus, with it pretty much being Jason versus Carrie, as he goes against a teen girl with telekinetic powers. The girl is not named Carrie, she's named Trish, but it's pretty much the same character. The film starts with a recap of the last, and we see Jason is still alive trapped underwater. Trish is arguing with her dad and goes out onto a pier above Crystal Lake, and she collapses it with her mind, plummeting him in to drown. We jump forward 10 years, and Trish visits again with her mum and a doctor. As it is a Friday the 13th film, there's also a group of partying teams there in the next cabin. We find out that the doctor brought Trish here as he is hoping the emotional setting will make her powers even more on display. Trish is missing her dad and goes to the water thinking of him, and I guess she's trying to bring him back to life or something, but she accidentally frees Jason. We then have Jason doing his usual stuff, picking everyone off, and his look in this film is just fantastic. From his time in the water, he looks like he's rotting away, and you can see like his spine and things. It's just a cool look. Jason eventually gets Trish's mum and doctor, and we're just left with an angry Trish to now take on Jason with her powers. There's also a hunky guy there who has been her love interest, but he doesn't really do much. The fight between them is really good, and during it Jason loses his mask. We have seen him maskless a few times in the earlier films, but this is usually on for a second or two. But here we get a good few maskless minutes with him, and it's really good makeup. Unfortunately, the end is really naff. They battle to the pier, Jason gets the upper hand before Trish rises her dad from the water to drag Jason back down. This makes no sense. Was his body never recovered? If not, why does he still look so great after spending 10 years down there? It's just a weekend after one of the more entertaining entries. I was feeling a bit of fatigue coming into this one.
You're joking. Not another one?
But someone else with powers did make this one feel different. It is also unfortunate again, there are quite a few deaths off screen. The Doctor is killed with a chainsaw and a pole, and the chase before this is really intense and exciting, but then it just sort of cuts away. Again, it feels like they're trying to cheap out on effects. I think the end of the film is Incredibad, but for the rest of it, and the change up in the character of Trish, I'm giving this film incredible thought. The 8th film is Jason Takes Manhattan, or a more accurate title would be Jason Takes a Boat to Manhattan. The opening credits show various locations in Manhattan, but then it's only like the last 20 or 30 minutes he actually gets there. The film does do some continuity though. At the start he's still trapped underwater following his battle with Trish. A boat with a young couple drop anchor, and this drags an electrical wire across and electricity wakes him up again. He then goes on board and gets rid of them. We then go to a harbour and see a boat being loaded with kids who are celebrating graduation. Our main character this time is Rennie, and she's there with her uncle who is a teacher, together with various other classmates. I was a bit disappointed to see this, as I would have preferred to see Trish come back and battle Jason again. Jason's boat pulls in and he gets onto theirs before it sets off. This does raise questions. As is Crystal Lake connected to the harbour then? I thought it was just a lake. And more importantly, how did Jason get the boat here? Did he steer it? It doesn't even attempt to explain. I suppose the boat setting is different though, and then Jason does his usual stuff on there taking them out. There's also some weird scenes. One student tries to record herself kissing a teacher to blackmail him, but then straight after this Jason gets the cameraman followed by her, and it just made that scene a bit pointless. Rennie also has strange visions on board of Jason as a child, which again just feels a bit weird and random. One good thing though is one of the students is played by Kelly Hu of X-Men 2. I do like when a familiar face pops up in these. They finally get off the boat and escape on a rowboat to Manhattan. Jason follows them, and if I'm honest, there's a 2-minute scene in Times Square that feels great, but then the rest of it feels like it could be anywhere. They're just in a subway or a restaurant. The plot takes a weird turn where we get a flashback to Rennie learning to swim with her uncle, and she encounters a child Jason. I have no idea how this fits in with the timeline, other than just to say it doesn't. It ends with Jason chasing Rennie and some other guy in the sewer, and they are told that toxic waste is about to be pumped through. I'm not really sure why. The toxic waste comes though, and it looks like it's melting Jason, but then when it's gone he's a child again. It's just baffling. I just don't understand this end. I do appreciate the different setting with it being mostly in a boat, but it's just a misleading title. It would be if like Jurassic Park The Lost World was named Dinosaurs on the Mainland or something, when that's just the end of the film. There is quite a variety of ways that Jason offs people, but none are particularly memorable. And I'm not sure if this was just down to the editing, but apparently Jason can teleport in this one. There's several scenes where that seems to be the only explanation how it occurs.
The curtains go up.
This is the second Kane Hodder Jason role, and although he doesn't talk, I do think he brings a good physicality to the part. This is mostly a disappointment though. There is another song that would also work as a review for this, but I think this gets YOLO. Film 9, and in this one Jason goes to hell. Or at least he does in the final 30 seconds of the film, as again it's a misleading title. This one starts with a police officer luring Jason to an area by parkouring there, and as Jason arrives he gets blown up by several other officers. The remains of Jason are taken to the mortuary for an autopsy, and we see his heart is still beating somehow, despite it not even being in his chest. You know that trope that films have with morgue workers always eating whilst they work to show how comfortable they are around bodies? Well, that happens here, but the morgue worker actually eats Jason's heart, which is just inexplicable. This makes him possessed by Jason, and he goes on a rampage in there before getting out. Jason's soul then swaps bodies into a police officer. You might be wondering how he swaps bodies, and it's through like a slug type thing in his mouth. It's just really random. We then see a cowboy who is doing press tours claiming he knows how to kill Jason, and he talks like they have a big history together. It's just all really jarring to add this guy we've never heard about in the night film, and then to add all this extra lore for Jason. You shouldn't be allowed to do that this far in the series.
I don't know if you're allowed to do that.
Apparently the only way to kill Jason is to have a family member do it, but also Jason can be reincarnated as a family member. Luckily, we now also find out Jason has a sister, a niece, and that his niece has also just had a baby. The possessed cop gets his sister, but then he's beat up by some guy named Josh, who is in love with Jason's niece. Bear with me here, as there's lots of characters. Jason's niece is married to another man named Robert, and Jason ends up possessing him. There is also a small role in the film by Leslie Jordan, and I was absolutely begging for Jason to possess him, but sadly that doesn't happen. They might as well have done. With how random the rest of the film is, they could have at least had some fun. In the end, Jason leaves Robert's body and runs around like a little slug lizard before finding his sister's body. I've no idea why that was still in the house. But finally, Jason is back with only a few minutes left in the film. Unfortunately for him though, his niece has a magical dagger. She stabs him, and some hands come up from under the ground and drag him to hell, before finally Freddy Krueger's hand comes out and drags his mask under. I just didn't like this one. Jason's barely in it, and it all kicking off by a coroner randomly eating his heart was just very daft. There are some okay effects here, and the cowboy character is cool, but it just adds way too much lore and things for this far in the franchise. This is easily my least favourite so far, and gets the whack album. So we have had several gimmicks for the film so far, but the 10th takes it to a whole new level. This time, Jason heads to space for Jason.
X gon' give it to you.
It opens at Camp Crystal Lake Cryogenic Facility. Jason has been captured and is chained up. One absolute idiot of a guard is making fun of him, and you don't need to guess what happens to him. There is also a surprising cameo here by David Cronenberg, so props to the film for managing to get him for that. Anyway, Jason gets free and is eventually cryogenically frozen, along with a woman named Rowan who is stabbed by him as she freezes. We jump forward 450 years later. Some people come across their bodies and decide to take them aboard their spaceship. Earth is dying, so everyone is currently moving to Earth too. As it's the future, they now also have nanobite technology that they use to bring Rowan back to life and heal her. We later find out that the ship captain is in debt, and he realised that the body was Jason, who is still famous in the future, so his plan is to sell that on the black market. That doesn't happen though. Jason wakes up and causes mayhem on the ship. This is pretty much just an alien movie, but with Jason instead of a xenomorph. At one point it appears the ship's android has got rid of Jason by blowing his leg and then his head off, but unfortunately he landed on the nanobot healing table, and is turned into an even scarier Super Jason. The film uses the location of being trapped on a rocket so much better than 8 did on a boat. The ship also has an X-Men type hologram machine they trap Jason in for a bit, which has a hilarious moment where he beats one girl in a sleeping bag with another girl in a sleeping bag, calling back to earlier in the franchise. In the end, the ship is exploding, but Rowan and some guy make it to another ship to escape. As the ship explodes, Jason is flying towards them, but an actor played by the big beefy guy from 300 grabs Jason, and they both burn up heading back to Earth, where Jason's mask lands back in Camp Crystal Lake. This is just all pure cinema. This one is way more inventive with the effects and kills than the previous few. And this is Kane Hodder's fourth and last time playing Jason, and he really makes him feel like an unstoppable monster here. This film is also just genuinely really funny in parts. From the premise, you might think this is an incredibly bad contender, but this is way better than that. Maybe it's just because I watched this back to back after parts 8 and 9, but this gets Everything is Awesome. I'd love a tiny nod to this one in the horror house somewhere, although I don't think that's likely. Part 11 goes back to the ending of Part 9, and we have Jason in another battle against your favourite knife-fingered character. Or second favourite, if your first is Vic Reeves as Lloyd Grossman. Here it is a battle of horror icons as Jason faces off against Freddy Krueger. Unlike several of the other titles in this series, this one actually provides what it promises. The film starts with Jason in hell, which by all accounts is pretty much heaven for him, as he is terrorising a skinny dipper. He's found by Freddy though, who pretends to be Jason's mum and asks him to go back to Earth to start having some fun up there again. We learn that on Earth, people have forgotten about Freddy, and as nobody remembers him, he has no powers to enter their dreams. His plan is to have Jason cause chaos on Elm Street, and that will get everyone talking about Freddy again so he can come back. Jason does just that, and our main group of characters this time even includes Kelly Rowland, who is on great and sweary form. She really should do more films. There are some fun moments. There is an amazing part where Jason interrupts a rave in a cornfield, and we know Jason hates young people drinking, and he goes to town on several of them there. We then go to an asylum where people get sent to when they know about Freddy, and they have a drug that stops them from dreaming, which means Freddy can't get them. Here, Freddy possesses a character who is a Jason Mewes knockoff, Fakeson Mewes, and gets rid of all the drugs to eliminate that, but also uses this to drug Jason. This is so they can have their first fight in the dream world. This is a bit cheesy. Jason is flung all around and ping pong ball noises are played. We also learn that Jason is scared of water, which doesn't really make sense. In part 8 I watched him walk underwater from a boat to Manhattan. Anyway, Jason is woken up by our gang of characters and they have a plan to pull Freddy into the real world, and you can do this just by holding him when you wake up. This then leads to Freddy and Jason battling on Earth. This is just brilliant. It is bloody and goes on for ages and has everything you could want. It is a bit rubbish that in the end the main final girl beheads Freddy, as I would have been happy to just have every other character leave at this point and just leave these two fighting. Freddy is fine despite being beheaded though, and even winks to the camera. Like the last one, this just maintains that fun tone. It's not perfect, but the acting is good as always, and Robert Englund is superb as Freddy. I think you can have a good Jason film in the future, whoever plays him, as he is a non-speaking role, but Freddy is all Robert Englund. I don't think it'll ever work without him. Just look at the remake. This film is enjoyable and rewatchable, so it gets incredible thoughts. It is final film of the franchise time then. This one is sort of a reboot and starts in 1980. We see recreated scenes from the first one with his mother at the end. We then go forward 30 years and you see some teens going to a party at Crystal Lake. As you already know, Jason hates this, and the first 20 minutes of the film is just Jason getting rid of them one by one. He's left with the final girl, and as he goes through it, we get the opening title card. This is just a perfect 20 minutes, and if this was just a short film with this would be 10 out of 10. We then jump forward a month, and another group of teens are coming, and at the same time, our main guy, Supernatural's Jared Padalecki, is coming to look for his sister, who was in the previous group. This is sort of a mixed story of films 2 to 4. There is lots similar here, but each film has its own gimmick to make them different, and the gimmick in this one is that it's darker and grittier. I'm okay with that, and this is the one with the most genuine tension and scares. But there is also another change that I don't like. Here Jason is smart and like a hunter. He has tunnels to travel everywhere, and uses things like a bow and arrow, and he now even runs. He sort of feels like Rambo in Rambo 5. It just doesn't feel like Jason. He isn't some unstoppable force of nature or a monster, he's just some guy. He also doesn't have the mask from the start, and again at the beginning has that Jonah Hill type bag on his head. It never looks as good until he gets his iconic look back.
Oh my god, did you see
Jason?
Tat, Vincent. Ha 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 ha.
What the hell?
Fortunately though, he does get the mask halfway through. In the film, we later find out that Jared's sister is still alive and Jason has chained her underground. It isn't explained why he kept her alive, and I really don't like this change. This is a good slasher film, but it just isn't a good Friday the 13th film to me. In the end, they get rid of Jason, but he pops back up out of the water for a jump scare. It's not a bad film, there's still plenty of like and nods to the others, but as it just doesn't feel like Friday the 13th, I think I'll give this Lazy Sunday. As there are so many of these, just to sum up as a whole, I really enjoyed this series. The continuity is as bad as the Saw franchise at points, but there are regular things that pop up in the films. I've just put some of them on screen here. It's also funny that Jason's main motivation is he's a bit of a prude about young people having fun or partying. He just gets offended by that each time and then kicks off on a rampage as soon as he spots them. And if you would like an easy way to remember each one, I've put the gimmick from each on the screen here. So as a full franchise, there are highs and lows, but this is still one of horror's best. I'll give the franchise a ranking Incredible Thoughts. The final IP house is the WWE house, The Horrors of the Wyatt Six. The description here is, it's the fight of your life. Enter the eerie arena of the Wyatt Six, where you will go through an ominous doorway into the maniacal minds of Uncle Howdy, Ramblin' Rabbit, Mercy the Buzzard, Abby the Witch, and Huskus the Pig. I have been a wrestling fan for all of my life, and like pretty much everyone who watched during the Fiend era, I was a massive fan of Bray Wyatt. I loved his Firefly Funhouse segments, and I really hope the house leans into this. For those who don't know, he had a few different characters throughout his time in the company, but his best was Incredible. He had a children's TV style show named the Firefly Funhouse and had lots of puppets with him. Things always felt off in these though, and that was just half his character. The other half was the Fiend, who he was trying to keep in, and just look at this look. If this was in a film as a character, I feel like this could be a modern horror icon just like Art is. For anybody who isn't aware, sadly Bray Wyatt tragically passed away in 2023 at the age of just 36, and we sadly lost one of the most talented character creators there ever was in wrestling. And if you read any interviews from people who worked with him or knew him, they all just say what a nice person he was and how much he was loved. In current day WWE, the Wyatt Six are carried on using his real life brother as the group's lead, a character named Uncle Howdy. There is a lot of lore to this that I'll not go into on this, but if I'm honest, this is probably the house I'm looking forward to most. Bray Wyatt created some incredible characters, and I hope this is a celebration of his creativity as well as being a scary house. Anyway, there is no set film to watch for this, so I watched the Wyatt Six most recent pay-per-view match at SummerSlam. This was a tables, ladders and chairs match. I think due to my age I was dismissive of this, thinking it wouldn't be as good as the classic TLC matches from when I was growing up with the Hardy Boys, Edge and Christian and the Dudley Brothers. But I'm pleased to admit I was wrong. This match was amazing and dangerous, and everyone in it was superb. It was like a modern classic of a match. The match ranking is easily Everything is Awesome. I still wanted to watch a film for this though, so after searching I found a wrestling horror movie named Dark Match. For this and the non-IP houses coming up, I will do a much briefer reviews as I know the houses aren't based on these, I just chose them based on vibes. On paper this does sound very suitable. It is about wrestlers and a cult, which is something Bray Wyatt's character prior to The Fiend was also heavily linked with. The story is set in the 80s, where a struggling wrestling promotion is offered a large amount of money to wrestle in the middle of nowhere. The matches are to be dark matches, which means they will not be televised. One thing I like about this film is it is set in the world of 80s wrestling, and it is aimed at wrestling fans. They use lots of terminology, like dark match, without explaining it. They just presume you'll know. There's regular use of terms like faces, heels, and kayfabe, things like that. When the wrestlers get there, they see the event is hosted by someone familiar. It is someone called The Leader, played by real-life wrestling legend Chris Jericho.
A little bit of the bubbly is back, baby!
The tournament has wrestling matches to the death, based on the 4 elements. There is a tag team air match with a fan in the ring, a water match which has sprinklers going off, an earth match which has dirt with all bits of glass in the ring, and then an inferno match where the ring is on fire. This last one was a real match a few times in WWE, but it looks different in this film. After the 4 matches, there is then a spirit match between the Leader and his former rival, Mean Joe Lean, played by Grand Theft Auto 5 star Stephen Ogg. This is a cage match where Mean Joe wins by stabbing Chris Jericho. Whilst all of this has been happening, there has been 2 simultaneous storylines running, which I feel is at detriment to the film. The first is we realise that the matches are being recorded as Jericho has a side business selling these as snuff films where people fight to the death. The other storyline is the cult are also convinced that these sacrifices will raise a demon, and in the end, after Jericho loses, this is what happens: a demon rises just before the credits. I don't think that the film really needed this. It seemed a good enough premise with the wrestler with a vendetta making his former colleagues fight to the death, and this supernatural end just didn't land for me. As I said, I can't see the house really being anything like this. If anything, I think with the Firefly Funhouse thing, the thing it'll most be like is the dream sequences from Terrifier 2. I still enjoyed it though. I think wrestling is an area where there could be many great films, so I'll give this Lazy Sunday. first non-IP house I'll look at is El Artista, a Spanish haunting. Apologies for this pronunciation, but for this one it says Maestros del Art y del Terror. In 19th century Spain, a tortured artist moves into an isolated country manor to seek inspiration. Instead, the art comes alive and possesses him. You're about to be part of the permanent exhibition. I didn't know what to watch here. I chose something I'd not seen before and knew little about. I knew Francesco Goya was a Spanish artist from this period, and I also knew there's a film called Goya's Ghosts. And that sounds a bit spooky from the title, so I went with this. After watching it, I realised I messed up, and this has done zero to prepare me for whatever the house is. I didn't really want to talk about anything too serious in this, but this is a pretty serious film and a depressing watch. I'll not go into details on the story, as it has themes not too fun to discuss, but the basic story is it's set in 1792 during the Spanish Inquisition. I know very little about this time other than the Monty Python sketches.
Nobody expects the Spanish Inquisition!
Javier Bardem works for the Inquisition, and is getting his portrait painted by Francesco Goya, played by Stellan Skarsgård. There he sees a painting of Natalie Portman, who is someone Goya regularly paints, and has used her face for some angels in the church. It all then gets a bit serious, but basically the Inquisition arrests Portman and she's tortured. To cut out several serious bits, the film then jumps forward 15 years and follows the now released Portman trying to find her baby she had whilst in prison. Over the end credits though, we do see several Goya paintings, and these are of demonic and disturbing images. I feel like these paintings are what the house will more likely be like rather than the film before it. Hopefully some of the paintings will inspire bits of the house, then at least this will tie in some way. This was a well-made film, and Bardem, Skarsgård and Portman were all superb. I wasn't a big fan that it wasn't in Spanish though, and nobody even tries to do an accent. I also really don't know anything about this history, but given the number of conveniences in the plot, I'm guessing this is a fiction story. And with the title, I was just waiting for ghosts to pop up, but they never did.
Yeah, sure you have. You have my
Ghost.
right?
Yeah, it's coming. It'll be here in a few minutes.
What do you mean it's coming, Denny? Where's my
Ghosts. I guess I'll give this I don't want to say lazy Sunday, as I don't watch this to relax. I don't think that it's good enough for Incredible Thoughts, so I'm going to go with YOLO, as I'm in no rush to see it again. I do hope some of the paintings inspire some of the house though, at least. Next up for non-IP is Dolls Let's Play Dead. This is described as welcome to her toy box of terror. You're about to become doll-sized and witness the unnatural creations of a twisted little girl. You'll be hunted by burnt fashion dolls, toys she's melded together, and undead horrors in her dollhouse. Hearing toys melded together, it just clicked to me what I should watch for this. This sounds like Sid's house in the original Toy Story. This might not be a horror film, but I was on a run of watching several back-to-back and just fancied a change. And watching it again, I do think this is similar to what the house could be like. I'm confident this is at least more relevant than Goya's Ghost will be. You probably know the story, but if not, this follows toys of a kid named Andy. His favourite toy is Woody, a cowboy voiced by Tom Hanks, but then he gets a new toy for his birthday, Buzz Lightyear, who becomes his new favourite. Eventually, both Woody and Buzz end up in the house of Andy's neighbour Sid. When we first see Sid, in the film he is blowing up a toy soldier with a firework. When we next see in his house, we see him steal his sister's doll and put the head of the doll in a vice and take it off and swap it with a pterodactyl head. When Woody and Buzz are in the house, they see some of his other creations, and several do look like they've just exited a horror film. There is a bald baby head on like a Meccano spider or crab body. We see lava lamps with doll parts floating in them, and just everything we see is a mishmash of toys, like a car with arms instead of wheels, and some doll's legs stuck to a fishing line. Sid even sort of tortures Woody, burning his head with a magnifying glass in the sun. I've also not yet mentioned that Sid has a dog that likes to rip up the toys. Woody and Buzz think the toys are cannibals and are scared of them, but they turn out to be friendly and even help repair the injured Buzz. I'm not going to lie and say this is scary or pretend like it's anything other than a film suitable for all ages, and I also know the house is not based on this, but watching this you can definitely see this is a setting where an adult haunted house could work. I imagine there would be a big market for reimagining childhood shows as adult horror. It's a great film, the effects are a bit dated but not as much as they expected. I think it's mostly the backgrounds don't seem as textured as modern films, but the main characters still look good and the voice cast were perfect. Tom Hanks is charming as ever and Tim Allen's just perfect at playing a confident idiot. This film gets incredible thoughts. The next one I looked at was Grave of Flesh. This says, "You're dead meat. Welcome to your funeral, where things are about to go from bad to worse. You'll enter your grave and then the underworld, where flesh eaters who feed on the dead will hunt you for all eternity." Being hunted by flesh eaters obviously sounds like a zombie film, so that is where I turned for this. I was just going to watch Dawn of the Dead, but as I've seen that film several times, I thought I'd go with one I've seen less, so I went with the 5th Romero zombie film, Diary of the Dead. I am hoping the house has slow shuffling zombies like these, as they're pretty much my favourite movie monster. I know it's been said before by several people, but they're the ultimate metaphor for death. They're slow and lumbering, and you think you'll outrun them forever, until, before you know it, you're cornered and your time is up. Anyway, for the story of this, it is set at the start of a zombie epidemic. Our main characters are filming their own student mummy film, but as a zombie outbreak happens, it turns into a documentary on what is happening. Given this is the storyline, it is filmed in a documentary style and presented as their documentary named Death of a Death. I wasn't a big fan of this when it came out, but revisiting it now I liked it more. It is flawed. There are several scenes where it cheats the found footage rules, and it has some good zombie carnage, but there are some pretty poor and dated CGI effects where practical would have held up much better. I do quite like the characters though, and how quickly most of them just accept zombies are real.
Or whether or not ghouls exist or...
They do, though.
No, they don't.
No, they do.
You've never seen
Yes, I have seen them.
One thing that does work as well, as it does with all of the Romero films, is how it handles the social commentary. It's an interesting time capsule for the early 2000s internet, and it does make you a bit nostalgic for that. The world was changing at a fast pace then, with everyone having a smartphone and the capability to record, and also with now social media, people had a place where they could share anything. I do think the message of the film would be the opposite now though. Here the story is that the media is suppressing the truth, and now people could only believe what was being shared online. However, now with fake AI imagery, and the monetary encouragement to just post anything for engagement, if something like this happened now, you just wouldn't know who to trust online. Anyway, I don't think this will be relevant to the house other than hopefully zombies, but I'll have my fingers crossed that the Romero films have some influence on there in some way. This gets Lazy Sunday. Although it probably wouldn't be a lazy day if the undead did rise again.
It was also the night that the skeletons came to life.
The next house is HHN25's Demon Bounty Hunters. They're the outlaws from hell. In this old west town, all hell is breaking loose. Red-hot lava demons are trying to possess everyone, melting everything in their path. Your only hope, hatchet and chains with their mystical weapons. I struggled to think what to watch for this, but in the end I rewatched R.I.P.D. I remembered that had Demon Bounty Hunters in. This starts off with Ryan Reynolds as an officer dying on a raid. He gets sent to an afterlife office where he meets Mary Louise Parker, who informs him that they know he was a dirty cop in real life, so he now has to work as a cop in the Rest in Peace department for 100 years to make up for this. His job is to hunt dead people who refuse to go to the afterlife and stayed on Earth. These people are known as deados. Reynolds then gets paired up with Jeff Bridges, a cowboy cop, and he's pretty much playing his true grit character here. You might think this is a strong premise, and it is. It's a really good one. This could have been an amazing film. I think Hatchet and Chains has the potential to be one of the best houses, as it is a fun idea. It absolutely does not work here though, and this is just a poor version of Men in Black. The story is similar, the character dynamic between Reynolds and Bridges is just like Will Smith and Tommy Lee Jones, and it's just a copy and paste script but with deados instead of aliens. The deados look like normal people, but then if they come into contact with cumin, the herb, they turn into monsters, and the CGI in this film is just awful. It hasn't aged well at all. There is only one funny joke in the film. Jeff Bridges is seen by everyone living as a supermodel looking woman, and it is funny seeing everyone interact with him thinking that he is her, and also seeing the actress saying old-timey cowboy lines. The rest of the jokes just don't land though. Jeff Bridges tries his hardest in Rooster Cogburn mode, but everything else here is just low effort and lazy. It's a shame, as they could have done some good things. I mean, Reynolds still loves his wife, and they could have used that as a twist where the deados they're hunting aren't actually bad. They were just staying for loved ones on Earth, and you find out that Reynolds was working for the bad guys. But nothing like that happens. This is all pretty generic. It even ends with the typical portal in the sky that all films of this period ended with. Anyway, I doubt this will really reflect the house. It's another bad choice by me, and this is getting whack album. Final house time, and this is Galkan, Monsters of the North. This is Call Forth, a Legion of Terrors. In a remote northern village, a wicked being rises from the dead, bringing a horde of monsters and demons from the fjords to wreak havoc on the townspeople. Try to escape the belly of the beast. As this was the last film, I thought I'd end with one I already knew that I liked. So for this, I watched The Northman. It's set with Vikings, and I remember the scene where Alexander Skarsgård fights a monster for a sword, so I thought this was a suitable choice. The story is all very Viking Lion King. King Ethan Hawke is slain by his brother Claesbang. Ethan Hawke's son escapes and returns later as big beefy Alexander Skarsgård to get revenge and take back what is his. The reason I chose this was the fight scene in particular with the monster, and if the house has any moments that feel like this, then it will be superb. The film also does deal with the mystical, with Willem Dafoe and Bjork and others popping up as witches. It's directed by Robert Eggers, and it is a very Robert Eggersy film. Cinematography is great, and it's all a film about aesthetics really. It's not for everyone, it just throws you in the world and doesn't explain things. But I feel that may help with the haunted house. There's a bit at the start where they go to meet the witch Willem Dafoe. Most films would have lines of exposition to explain what they're doing or where they're going, but it just doesn't do that here. It's not confusing, but it just feels different that you get put in the situations without explanation. It's not perfect. I get annoyed with a plot point where Skarsgård kills Bang's oldest son, then Bang ties him up to go to a funeral and then comes back to kill him, but he's already escaped. I mean, why did he even wait? These are just nitpicks though, and it is really well made and the cast are all great. I mentioned Walton Goggins' range before, but Skarsgård is also challenging him for a variety of roles in recent years. He has this, Murderbot and Succession all being totally different roles. He's a big, muscly and distinctive looking guy, but for some reason he's one of those people I don't usually recognise straight away, just because he's always so different.
Don't get up, I just find the supplies because I'm a...
Alexander Skarsgård. I also like that as it goes on you realise he isn't really a hero. He's doing just as terrible things as well, and you soon realise there are no good characters. It's just set in a horrible, violent world, and everyone is pretty much as bad as each other. The story could have easily been told by Claesbang's youngest son point of view, and Alexander Skarsgård would be the monster who eventually kills all his family. I'm not sure how relevant this will be to the house, but if it's anything like it I'll be very happy, and as a film this gets incredible thoughts. So that was all 10 houses, and I genuinely think I've got a great year to be coming for the first time. From what I've just watched, I can't really say what I'm looking forward to from the non-IPs, as these were just guesses. If you think any other films would have been more suitable, please let me know. For all the IP houses though, I'm super excited. Fallout is a world I love, and I can imagine this being a really fun house. With Terrifier, I might have not loved the films, but I do love Art the Clown as a character, and I think a haunted house will be the perfect place for a character like this. Five Nights at Freddy's, again, I wasn't a huge fan of the film, but I did love the aesthetics and look of the characters, and as they get close to that, this will be the most visually impressive one. I do have a soft spot for the Jason films, so I'm going to love that house. As they're all fresh in my mind as well, I can't wait to hunt out Easter eggs in them. And with Wyatt 6, I just hope they can honour Bray Wyatt, and that's the one I'm looking forward to most. I will give my thoughts on the houses after I return from Florida, so please subscribe if you'd like to see that. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you again soon. Thank you.